Welcome to the NOFAMAS Winter Conference, and I have a few announcements before we get started with our workshop today. Thank you so much for joining us. So we are presenting this conference on land that was inhabited by the Nipmuc people prior to European colonization. And we encourage you to learn more and honor those whose land you now occupy by visiting native-land.ca when you have a chance. If you're participating online, you can check that out now. If not, we encourage you to check that out later. We also recognize that our agricultural system is built on stolen land and the forced labor and exploitation of stolen Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. Our conference aims to help to address this harm and bring equity to the food system. And we encourage you to join our BIPOC and White Ally Caucus groups. They'll be meeting today at 1 p.m. So they'll both be taking place in Sheehan Hall. The BIPOC Caucus group is in the multi-purpose room, and the White Ally Caucus group will be meeting in a corner of the dining room. I also want to take a moment to thank our partner level sponsors. Without their support, we couldn't be here today, so we really appreciate their financial support, and as well as our supporter level sponsors. Lastly, I want to encourage everybody to check out our winter conference auction. You can find a link to it in the host announcements on Whova, the organizer announcements on Whova, and here's the website. This will be open until the end of the day on Sunday. And this really supports NOFAMAS and all of our programming throughout the year, so it's really important to have your support with our winter conference auction. Thanks so much. All right, well, Mark brings up the other slideshow. I am going to introduce our workshop today and our speaker today. So I just want to pause for one moment and make sure you all are able to hear me and everything is working well on the tech side. We all good? Okay.
How do I make this one slide?
All right, I'm going to keep going here and let you guys figure out the slides in the background, but we're here today to hear about advocating for a more inclusive and accessible future in agriculture. Our presenter today is Dr. Ivette Ruiz, and Dr. Ruiz is a founder of Healing by Growing Farms, and she was inspired to create a healing trauma-based farm after suffering a traumatic brain injury herself 2 years ago while preparing for disaster relief employment during Hurricane Isaias in 2020. The brain injury caused prolonged PCS, Post-Concussion Syndrome, and her life has not been the same since. She has experienced discrimination, unemployment, and lack of proper and timely medical care and attention. After realizing how difficult it was to get any treatment or understanding, her salvation was working in her home gardens, tending to her chickens, and finding a way to help those impacted gravely by the COVID pandemic. As a Latinx third-generation new farmer and first-generation doctoral graduate, Dr. Ruiz wants to use her vast knowledge and experience to help others who have gone and are going through similar hardships in AG. Her executive work in healthcare, humanitarian relief, public service, food sovereignty, social justice, and education helped lead her to this innovative ministry in creating the first Northeast Disability and Agriculture Conference, scheduled for Saturday, February 4th, 2023 in Connecticut. And I'm sure you can ask her more about it. She is often a sought-out speaker on justice, equity, diversity, and all abilities inclusion. Dr. Ruiz educates, consults, and coaches AG groups nationally on the importance of services, integration, access, and accommodations. She has most recently presented to the Northeast USDA Farm Services Agency and NRCS Internal All Abilities Team, the new CT Farmers Alliance, Yukon Extension School, Yukon Extension Solid Ground, and the National Young Farmers Network, Cultivemos Group. She is honored and pleased to share and learn together with all participating during this presentation. So without any further ado, I'll hand things over to Dr. Ruiz. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Good morning.
Good morning.
I said good morning. Yeah, still morning, right?
Yeah.
Buenos dias.
Buenos dias.
Oh, you all need some coffee or something. Let's try that again. Buenos dias.
Buenos dias.
Yeah. I want to say thank you to Jocelyn. Did I say that right? And to Mark for being here and being our tech in our hands today. Could not do this without them, so thanks to both of them. I would like to start by going around and everyone maybe is sharing what state they're from, their name, their pronouns, and what capacity are you here with? Are you a farmer? Are you a farm worker? Or do you own your own land? Are you a gardener? Are you a grower, producer? Share a little bit about us.
Yeah.
We're gonna just go this way
Perfect.
because you know the fish. It just got my attention.
Hi guys, my name is Brad. I use he, him, his pronouns. I live from here, Massachusetts, originally from Plymouth, and I've been living in Worcester. I work out in Lancaster at World Farmers. It's a nonprofit that basically gives farmers access to land, market resources, or whatever they need to like help them succeed. And we mostly employ, we mostly like have people come to us who are refugee farmers or BIPOC farmers or people who have moved here and want to like get back into farming.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Aviva. I use she and they pronouns. I'm originally from Ohio, but I've been living in the Berkshires for about a year, and I'm currently working at Wilderness Farm.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Fallon Davis from Newark, New Jersey. My pronouns are they, them. My capacity is many things, but I'm an advocate and I'm a connector. So my biggest things around farming and urban agriculture is to advocate for Black and Brown, Indigenous immigrant farmers, land ownership, making sure that they're getting what they need, creating the resource funnels for sustainability, and really finding how to take out the aggravation from just folks who want to do their artistry. So I take out the aggravation and I kind of deal with that and resolve so that they're safe and protected. The work that they're trying to do is artists, healers, green environmental justice leaders alike.
Thank you.
I'm here representing Turtle Tree Seed in New York, the university. And I work for Campbell Village, which is a community of 235 people with just shy of 100 are adults with the developmental differences. The reason I'm here, I've been at Campbell for so long now, since 1995. Working with handicapped people on the land, but I really want to know what else is going on out there. One becomes kind of involved in your own community.
Thank you.
My name is Chris Yoder, he, him. I operate Vanguard and CSA, Vitamin Vegetable Farm in implements.
Sunny Smith.
Can we hear? Jocelyn, can you hear everyone?
Sunny Smith.
Yeah, some people are a little quiet.
Because there are other people on the other side.
Okay, should I speak up?
Yeah, do you mind? If you can.
Sunny Smith. I use they, them pronouns. I'm from Holyoke, Massachusetts. And I am learning.
That's a great thing.
We're all learning, right?
I use she, her pronouns. I'm from Massachusetts and I currently live in Western Mass, in Marketing. I'm a farm worker. I work on a vegetable production farm called Clinton Clover.
Awesome. Mark, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
I'm Mark. I'm currently working in Springfield with Sister Anna in the Tapley Court Garden and the Open Pantry Garden in Springfield. I'm a youth leader.
Awesome. Jocelyn, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey there, my name is Jocelyn Langer. I use she, her pronouns, and I am participating virtually. We have a few other virtual participants here too. I'm the executive director of NOFA Mass, and I'm participating from home. Have you heard from the virtual participants, and do you want to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves right now?
Yes, that will be wonderful. That's where we're heading next, please.
Okay. I'll maybe just call on folks, and I don't know if their names are the names they want to be called by in the Zoom, but I'm seeing Maria. Do you want to join us, Maria? And
Yes, I'm happy to be here. I'm with NOFA New York, and I'm drawn to your presentation. I'm in New York State.
great, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we have Marcos. And I'll just wait one more second and see if he wants to introduce himself. And then we have Anne also participating online. Anne, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yep, I'm trying to figure out okay. Hi, I'm Anne from Middletown, Rhode Island, and I'm interested because I'm a holistic body worker and I have worked many years as a physical therapist. And so I'm interested in including different ability levels. Thank you.
Thanks so much. All right, I think that's our online audience. I think Dr. Ruiz, take it from here.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. Can we get back to escape? She has said to go.
Yes, that.
Yeah.
And then you click the bottom.
Presentation.
This one right here?
Yes, and nothing.
Oh,
No share. Justin, we're just trying to share the presentation to the Zoom folks,
No.
okay.
and then
Now,
Yeah, I'm seeing it on Zoom. Looks good.
now present it. There you go.
you did it. Yay! Teamwork. We got a whole team effort here going. I'm excited. This is new for all of us, so thank you all for your patience and for your flexibility. We understand what technology we all learn in the process. So thank you all. Again, I want to start by creating a safe space. So we want to create a space for all abilities. That means people with limitations and people that don't have any limitations. And many times we can't see whether somebody has a limitation or not. And so we assume because someone looks okay or looks a certain way or they fit into a certain box that they're okay. So for example, I'm going to start with myself. What do you see when you look at me? So what do you see when you look at me? Nothing will offend me that you say, and anyone virtually can go as well. They have to let us know. So when you look at me, what do you see?
Physically able.
A physical able person? Okay, good. What else?
Very bubbly, enthusiastic.
Bubbly and enthusiastic, yeah.
Welcoming person.
Welcoming, okay. What is it?
Yeah, I think I would notice your physical features.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you. What else? What else do you see? Oh, I am, yeah, I am. I am, because I'm usually way taller. I mean, way smaller.
You look like someone important.
I look like someone important, must be the jean jacket.
That's it.
It's the jean jacket, right? So this is how people oftentimes judge people, right? When we're in the market, when we're in the gas station, when we're at the library, when we're at the school, when we're at the garden, when we're growing, we often look at people and put them in a box, right? Based on what we see. Sometimes it's accurate and sometimes it's way off, right? Because unless you heard what Jocelyn said earlier or read my bio, then you would not know that I am recovering from a brain injury. And so I have a lot of limitations. I may be talking to you, and in a few minutes, I might lose my words. And I might have to just put my head down and take a moment until it comes back. And so that's something that you can't see, right? Another limitation I have is I can't look at the screens for more than a few minutes because it gives me severe migraines and it gives me tremendous eye pain. Again, another thing that you can't see. Oftentimes we have programs, therapeutic services, and we tend to look at silos: mental health, cognitive health, behavioral health. If someone is walking in with a cane or with a wheelchair, right? But we don't often take a moment to really dissect what that feels like. So today we're going to be creating a space where we can reflect and share about our own experiences, either personally or at your jobs. A few of you work with people with disabilities and limitations, and there might be some questions. During the last couple of days, I had a lot of people through the program online ask me a lot of interesting questions, that some that I had not even thought about their limitations and how difficult it is for them. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, around the sharing and reflections. Then we're going to talk about some agriculture and disabilities practices. And then I'm going to provide a whole bunch of resources, both for funding, but also for how to become advocates within these systems for people with limitations. And a big group of people with limitations are senior citizens and people that are 50 and over. Something that is really, really important for us to know and understand is that over 50% of our farmer population is aging. They are within 50 age range and over. And as we age, we may not have a disability, but we may have arthritis from bending all the time and going up and down trucks and going to the beds and weeding and planting and seeding and all that. Our eyes fail naturally with age for many people. People have diabetes, so that means that they might have to take more breaks. People get fatigued and get tired. I get fatigued just walking from there to there. It's part of the healing process. And so really important that creating a safe space, that we are mindful of all these things. What does anybody here need anything in particular for this space to become a safer space for anyone online? For example, for me, it would be not to look at the screen and have Mark help me or Jocelyn when I need a slide rule. It may mean that I might need to sit down in a few minutes. It may mean that I might drink water. It may also mean that I may get emotional if I'm talking sometimes, talking about my story. What about you all? Is there anything that we need to make sure to be aware about so that we can create a safe space for you? This is a non-judgmental zone. Anything that you all want to share?
Respect my pronouns.
Respect the pronouns, okay? Really important, okay? Thank you. What else? I'm going to speak based on some of the questions that I got virtually before I got here, because I want to be able to respect people's confidentiality. So I'm just going to put their examples. Some people said to respect that they have trouble sometimes hearing. And so when we're talking, it's really important that we're mindful that we're speaking at a voice that everyone can hear, but we're not screaming or yelling. I don't have to wear a hearing aid to have a hearing impairment. I sometimes don't hear a lot of things, depending if I'm having a migraine or not. So being mindful of that in the space that we're in, that we're speaking at a tone that everyone could hear you. And if someone can and ask for you to repeat themselves, that it's okay to do that, okay? So that's the one that came up the most. And so I want to move us to, if nobody else has any other things to add about creating a safe space, I want to move us to sharing and reflections. And I'm going to start with sort of moving through my journey, and then I'm going to hand it over to you all to see who wants to talk about your journey, okay? And what does that mean to you? So if I may ask everyone to close your eyes, if you're comfortable with that, close your eyes for one moment, please. And think about your most precious memories and the biggest thing that you ever accomplished that you are completely proud of and excited about. And then at the same time, with your eyes closed, I want you to make a fist and hold both of your hands with fist palm up in front of you. And as you're thinking about these wonderful memories, open up your eyes and open up your fist. You can go ahead and open up your eyes and open up your fist. And just like that, as quickly as you go like that, is how quickly, when you have trauma, you can lose your memories and you can lose it all. People don't realize that trauma has a major effect that causes many, many limitations. That's just one part of it. Again, one of the biggest parts that we don't see. Within farming and agriculture, suicide rates are 3.5 times greater than in the normal community. Many people do not realize that and don't know that. It's really, really important to be mindful of that. And so, one of the things that I was a executive for Yale University and Yale Health System. I oversaw 20 different hospitals across different states. And my most recent job, I worked for the National American Red Cross as a disaster worker. But my specialty was disability and integration and being the lead. So I would go to different states throughout the United States, and anytime there was a disaster, before, after, or during, and people will lose everything, I will be the person there to either search and rescue or to provide relief. Oftentimes I work with farmers. We all know that in farming, we work so hard, but we don't know when we're going to lose it or whether we're going to gain it, right? Because, you know, depending on the drought and the environment, whether we have water, whether we have the sun, depends on so many things. So imagine you're a farmer and you invested all this time, energy, and money into something, and then a major disaster comes and it's all washed away. The trauma that causes, the financial hardship that causes. And so these are all parts of limitations that people change when trauma happens to them. And sometimes it happens so quickly. And so as a result of what I have done in my career, I have learned many lessons, which is why I advocate now. But I also begin to see and realize all the limitations that is why I'm doing what I'm doing now. Go ahead. In this PowerPoint that is in front of us may not look like the typical professional corporate power slides like I once had. I create power slides now that have pointers and notes so that it could keep me where I need to be, because if not, I will lose my focus very, very quickly. Now, what other groups does that happen to? What groups can you think about that when they're studying or reading or looking at a visual, or they're presenting, or they might be having a dialogue, that they may lose their focus and they may lose their attention? What other groups can you think about? Young people, okay. What else?
Especially little ones.
Especially little ones, okay. What else? There's a lot of folks that experience PTSD. There's a lot of folks that have autism. There's a lot of folks that have experienced ADHD, ADD, and oftentimes they're afraid or shy to say that they have these things because of the stigma, or that they're afraid that people are going to make fun of them. But they may need certain tools. So when you're working with people, it's really important to make tools that work for them. And so I've created a PowerPoint that works for me, which looks very different than the one I used to make before. And so it might not go in order and it may look choppy, but it's what I need. So one of the takes away from this PowerPoint is to customize a PowerPoint, a presentation, a talk, whatever you're doing, You can still do it. Your clients, your employees, your teams can still do it. You just have to customize it and make it unique so that you do it in a different way. Okay? And so, part of my journey being an executive and working nationally and worldwide, all that vanished and went away when I was getting ready to deploy for a national disaster, and I fell and hit my head in a tree, in 2 trees, and suffered the brain injury. My life changed from there on. I went from 20 years of college education to a 4th grade level. 4th grade level of education. My grandkids know more than me. And it was hard, and it's still hard. So I've had to relearn everything. I'm still in speech therapy, cognitive therapy, physical therapy, and vision therapy. 2 years later. And so it's when I started noticing the issues and the problems and the access, and people say a lot of groups and a lot of hospitals and a lot of folks want to be inclusive and want to provide accommodations. But oftentimes people are not being bad or mean. Sometimes people just don't know what they don't know. And so it's our job to educate them. And sometimes that means putting us in the line. It's a sacrifice that we have to make. And so as I was trying to receive services, as a farmer now with a disability, I've always been a grower. I should say I was a grower. I didn't become a farmer until afterwards, and we'll get a little bit more into that. Some of the problems and barriers to healing in nature and growing food were the ones that are up here. So the top picture are green hospital spaces that oftentimes, if you have a disability and you want to grow or be around a green space, you usually have to be in a hospital. And most hospitals now have beautiful gardens that you could take advantage of. However, when you're no longer a patient of those hospitals or those institutions, you can't just go in there and use the garden. It doesn't work that way. And so for the many people that I work with, they usually don't have any green space. They just live in big, tall buildings in the city, and it's all crowded. And so having lack of green space was a major barrier. I know we can't see this much here because of the Zoom, but this one here says access to land. Access of land is a huge barrier because for people that want to heal while growing and being able to put their hands on the soil and on the earth and be able to see life recreate from the seed, they don't have the space to be able to do that. But we could teach them that you can still grow things in a pot. So that's, and again, education. Another barrier that we identified and that I personally experienced was money. For a while, I had a gap of insurance between working at the National Red Cross and losing my job. I resigned, but I still say losing my job because I can no longer do the executive level I used to do. There's no way I can do it. I mean, I had hundreds and hundreds of people under me, and people's lives depended on my decisions, and I cannot do that anymore. So I became a farmer. People think I'm nuts, but I love it. It's the best decision I could have ever made. But money became a barrier because now if I wanted to get therapy from a therapeutic farm, most of the time they don't accept health insurance, or you're underinsured, or they ask for a big co-payment, or you have to pay cash. So everywhere that I turned across the Northeast, because I didn't have my finances available to pay $60, $100 an hour twice a week, I could not benefit from that. Then the other barrier was wheelchair accessibility. So there's a lot of farms, a lot of people growing, a lot of people that want to be accessible and accommodating. But when I was in a wheelchair, I couldn't wheel myself through that space. There's just no way. When I had a cane, I still couldn't do it. And so it's thinking about accessibility, not only for cognitive and behavior, but also physical accessibility. It's really, really important. And lastly, another barrier that to me was significant was diversity. Going to a place to find a therapist or a rehab specialist, or find a farmer that did therapy that looked like me, or that could speak my language. For those of you that don't know, when someone is bilingual or has multiple languages, when they suffer trauma, they divert back to their original language or to their first language. For me, that's Spanish. And so that was another barrier for me because I couldn't remember English. So these are some of the barriers that prevent people from healing in natural spaces, but also that prevent people from growing food if they choose to do that for themselves as a healing process, as a therapeutic process. Any questions that you all may have at this point before I continue, or virtually?
Can I jump in here? This is Jocelyn.
Yes, please.
I just want to let you know that there are a couple more people who have joined us since we did our intros online. We have Ellen and we had Susan. I'm not seeing Susan at the moment. But Ellen did add a list of things, some of which you've covered: elders with dementia, ADD, ADHD, folks with concussions, post-concussion, chronic Lyme, and long COVID. So I just want to give a voice to folks who are posting in the chat, and I'll try to do that throughout the workshop. Thanks so much.
Please, thank you. Jocelyn, is there a better way to engage as I'm speaking?
You know, I can text Mark if there's something that seems urgent, and Mark can try to interrupt you. And if not, when you pause, I'll just jump in.
Okay, no problem. Just let me know. I don't mind being interrupted, okay? And in the room here, we also have two new participants in the introductions. Could you please share your names?
Laura.
And what state are you from? Newton, Massachusetts. And can you tell, you a farmer, a grower?
I work with them.
You work with NOFA. Okay, a lot of NOFA in the house. I like that. Yes.
I'm John Dober, farmer and a teacher at Hollyville Farm in Cohasset, Massachusetts.
Welcome, welcome. Welcome to all of you, both online, virtually, and also here in this space. Did you have your hand up, Pam? Yes.
Yeah, I have a question, and I apologize for coming in a little.
No,
late.
it's okay. No worries.
Reading problems and barriers to healing. You mentioned insurance. I work with a group for a recovery center, and there are barriers in people who are in recovery because they go to the hospital and get medicine. We're trying to teach them how to not use the medicine. Can you expound on that? Like, what's if they want to get off the drugs, but then the hospital is giving them drugs, but they're in recovery from the drugs. And we're trying to teach them how to heal naturally, maybe weaning off the drugs.
So I'll just touch a little bit on that, maybe just a couple lines, because I want to stay in focus.
Okay.
And then maybe you and I can spend some time offline. Would that be okay?
Yes.
So the first things that come to mind, given my medical experience at the hospital before all this happened, was that for some things, I'll use alcohol for an example. Some people cannot withdraw from alcohol on their own because they can die. They could go into seizures and die. That could be the case also for some drugs, some other drugs. It all depends on the person, and this is not clinical advice, so I want to make sure that that's clear. But things that you could research on. But in the medical field, there are some conditions and diagnoses and some withdrawals that that need that medical supervision, that clinical medical supervision, sometimes even with medicine, to keep them safe. So some people cannot transition from one to the other. Some people can and do just fine. Some people can just cold turkey, quit A, B, and C, while others cannot. So it's a person by person situation. And people that don't have insurance that need that type of transition, when they go to certain recovery places, they do help them get the insurance that they need. But we could talk more about that offline if that's okay.
Yes.
So that we could stay in check. Is that
Thank
okay?
you so much.
You're most welcome. Yes,
There's a comment right there.
comment? Oh, Jocelyn read it a little while ago. So the comment was from Ellen, and Ellen was adding some additional conditions that can take place. And these are all great ones: chronic Lyme, long haul COVID, concussion. So thank you, Ellen, for that. We can minimize that window and go to the next slide, please. I'm gonna skip through a lot of slides because we got a lot more people than what I thought, and I wanted to hear about your stories as well and your questions. So
See that small,
Oh,
the small line?
I'm
Right
sorry, I
there?
can't look at the movement of the screen.
There
So
you go, press.
um,
Boom.
thank you. So what did I do? I could no longer do what I used to do. And it became really hard. And I can't explain how hard it was because it's different for everybody. But it got to the point that I became suicidal. And I want to say it was through the grace of God that I'm here today. And I was able to pick myself up and go do what I used to do, which was to grow things. And in growing things, it gave me a purpose again. It gave me life. But in addition to that, when I started going to therapy, I started seeing other people in that very deep, dark stages. And I started sharing with them, you know, you don't have to go through that. This is what I did. It may not work for everybody, but here's some ideas. Maybe you could grow this, maybe you could listen to this book, and telling people about growing things and being in nature and being in the ground and seeing, you know, you put a seed in the soil that is dark, that is moist, that doesn't have no light, that if I'm a seed, I'm like, oh, that's horrible. Don't put me in that hole. But in life, in reality, that's sometimes where life puts us. So we could come out of that. We could come out of that if we choose to. Sometimes it's really hard. And sometimes you can't even find your way, and you need counseling, and you need medical, and you need all of those. Sometimes you need those interventions. But from that dark space and that small seed comes life and purpose. And that's how we came about. That's how Healing by Growing Farms came about. It was just something that came out because I needed to do it for me, and I needed to be able to heal. And in the healing process, I started telling people about it with other disabilities, and they started coming to my house. I have a very, very tiny little place. Like, do you want to know how little? Who wants to take a guess? Yes.
Studio?
No. Meaning green space, my green space.
Oh, 8 by 8?
Half an acre.
I have a tenth of an acre.
Oh, 10.
A tenth. Okay, tiny. And on that first year that I started doing this work with other people who were in that same space, and I was teaching them how to become growers and grow food for the COVID impacted food deserts, we grew over 300 pounds of food that we donated. And that's how Healing by Growing Farms started. Just with that amount of darkness, but with hope and faith that there was a need and we needed to meet it, because we had to find a way to talk to people about barriers. Continue. And in that, we found out that a lot of people who were 50 years old and older were really struggling because healing, once you get a certain age, sometimes it gets prolonged. It just takes a little longer. Or, you know, maybe we don't have the same energy as someone who's young. And so it was then that I started talking to folks about, well, what do you have? What is your condition? And given my medical background, I do have medical clinical background, I was able to work with people to teach them a different way. And I started teaching them how to have a different narrative and how to change their voices on their head that said, I can't do it. I want to die, or this is not for me. I can't do that anymore, to saying, what else can I do? Where else can I find purpose? Where else can I find light? And I decided to create a community that was a healing community. And this is what one of my volunteers here was saying. Who would like to read it? Yes.
Connecting with others in a non-judgmental setting with the land and self feels grounding, while learning new things and how things grow is healing and fun.
So we were harvesting potatoes, And they never, according to what they have said to me is, they're Yale University graduates. One is an attorney, and one is a community grassroots advocacy person. And what they said to me is, we never even knew where the potatoes came from. They would pull them up, and you know how they all hang, and they were like, oh, we never knew they came from there. And it was just amazing watching their faces, and they both have trauma, old trauma from childhood. And they would just turn to like children almost with the curiosity, thank you, and just being so excited to see that they learned something new about something that they are going to consume and put in their bodies, and how exciting it was. So people heal through nature in many, many different ways, and they learn as they go. Next slide. And so finding ways, so we're going to talk about the barriers a little bit more in a few minutes, but I want to pause here to say that sometimes in the midst of darkness and in the midst of pain or hurt or tragedy, hope can take place. And so that's what I'm hoping that people with disabilities can see, that it doesn't matter what limitations we may have and how difficult it may be or how old we're getting, that things do change for us, but we can change with it and we can evolve and grow with it. But it's an intentional decision and choice that we have to make. And it's not always an easy one. So now I would like to hear what has been your journey, either virtually or here. And have you ever had any healing through your own experiences through farming? And so we want to take some time to reflect and share and hear from a few people that are participating, again, virtually or here, to share their story and their journey. I want to hear their narrative. Who would like to share? I'm going to start with you, and then with you, and then I think I saw a hand back here. We'll go back here.
So my mom started a nonprofit when I was like, I think about
And we have one hand raised online.
Okay, great. So we'll go 1, 2, 3. And I'll come back this way? No? Okay, all right, go on, please.
So she started a nonprofit that was all about like getting community, because I'm from Plymouth, but we didn't have a lot of like community agriculture or like community gardens. That just wasn't something that, it was still kind of like getting traction in mass, but we just didn't have any in Plymouth. So she wanted to start doing that. And I agreed with her, and I liked kind of the mission she had behind it. So we started putting gardens at like schools, or like the best ones were at neighborhoods, because a lot of the people like, would come out of their neighborhood, ones that like were traditionally pretty violent neighborhoods, or like ones that didn't have a lot of access to like good local food. I'm talking ones that like right off the highway that only around them is like, you know, McDonald's or Burger King and stuff like that. So like giving that to people was really awesome. And then that kind of got me onto like local food systems and like how can we provide like good access to like healthy food for people who need it, like organic food who like really need it. And also like it's super cool to see like people in that community all gathering to do something together, right? Instead of just like either staying locked up inside their house or like committing violent acts, just like bad things happening. They just decide to like come out and like it's really social, and like people just start getting out and active in their community, which is really cool to see. And so that just kind of brought me onto this path of like community agriculture, connecting people with the land. That's kind of how I ended up here.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Who else would like to share? I believe you're up.
All right, so how I started, you know, with this. So it's kind of a rough path. Like I was like, so I'm in like a first felony offenders program, and I'm just trying to like get my life together and gather up so I can get out of this and go back home to my family in New York. So I remember saying to an educator that I've been wanting to garden since a kid, you know, like the whole spiritual way, you know, natural, I'm vegan, so you know, my food choice is like healthier, like cooking for myself, all that. So I mentioned I wanted to work in a garden, and someone had plugged me in. They're just like, if you're serious, I'll plug you in right now. I was like, right now? She says, right now. So then I met Sister Anna, And ever since I've been working with her, she's kind of saved my life because I was like in and out violating probation. And I was like on the verge of like doing a 2.5 bid. So it's just like if it wasn't for her and like working with her, you know, I kind of would have been in the same predicament, you know, in the same spiral. So yeah, working with her definitely saved my life. I get to eat for free, don't have to spend no money. Definitely heal my mind and just stay away from the street. Sure.
Great, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to turn it over to you, Jocelyn, for the virtual participants, please.
Sure, Ellen?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
So I've gone through a bunch of illness, but also thanks to the developers in my neighborhood and the leaf blowers, I've had a couple of noise-induced concussions this year. And it really messed up with my cognitive executive functioning. And for the first time in my life, my imagination actually failed me. And I'm a writer and I'm a very creative person. And so when I sit at the computer, you know, and I'm trying to write things, and I was a writer, I still am, I'm still able to write. Got very confusing, and even my ability to type really challenged. So I find that just going out and digging in dirt, right? We all know about earthing, right? Like where you actually put your bare feet or hands on the earth. But even just not doing that, but just being out there on the earth and doing very physical tasks. So to kind of take the energy from, you know, and I had a background in holistic healing, massage therapy, reflexology, whatnot. But just take that energy for that's kind of confused and whatnot in this part of the brain, and just, you know, by doing that very physical stuff, you know, you just kind of send it down through the feet, you're with your back and your legs, and you know, I might not be able to lift a whole lot, but I find that that's really healing. And so I love to go out, you know, reasonably early in the morning and dig. And, you know, I don't love having warm weather in the winter. I'm one of those people that really thinks, you know, it's indicative of climate. But at the same time, I am able to go out and get some gardening chores done at this time of the year. So on that level, it's healing. And, you know, during this period, I helped to create a couple of groups where we got raised bed gardens out to folks called the Resiliency Gardens Project and Community Equitability Food Bags, where I actually have like 3 people, you know, picking up, delivering food, and we get food bags out to people. And, you know, we try to be a different model than the typical pantry where, you know, like pat you on the head and they say, don't you ask for any vegetarian food or gluten-free or whatever. We're going to give you what we can. And we're very different where we focus on like maybe 80% veggies and healthy foods, mostly local, some of it organic. So, you know, really kind of changing that narrative around on a community or several community level. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ellen. That was great. And I can relate to some of those challenges that you talked about.
I would love to chat with you like outside of this, because, you know, I'm part of Brain Injury Association, you know, different support groups and whatnot. And I'm telling you, once you've heard what other people are going through that might have resonance or similar, or might be different, it really helps. And you're like, oh, I'm not crazy. This happens because of a brain injury, because
Yes.
dysregulation of emotions or abilities or whatever it is.
Yes, we definitely need to stay connected for sure. One of the things that I like to do a lot of research whenever my eyes allow me. And one of the things that I've done a lot of research about is a brain injury, obviously, because it was completely new to me. Because I've always heard about brain injury in football or sports activities and things of that nature. I didn't realize that after doing my homework and my research, that brain injuries happen much more within domestic violence to women who are battered, men and children. It happens oftentimes a lot greater in accidents, motor vehicle accidents, motorcycles, bikes. It's happening a lot. One of the top three is people 50 and over, because they hit their head with a cabinet, or they're cleaning and they fall, they're in a ladder to try to get something. And what is most important to me, why I wanted to do this work in farming, is that mining is the #1 high risk, most dangerous job that anyone can have, according to some research. Depending on what research you look at, you get different lineups. But in a lot of research that I did, farming is the second one. Farming is the one of the most riskiest jobs and the most dangerous one. What do you think that is? And we're not talking 1/10 of an acre in my house, okay? Although I did suffer a second concussion when my chicken coop roof fell on my head just this summer. So what do you think that is? What do you think farming is considered one of the most dangerous, a very dangerous job? Again, depending on what line, usually falls within the top 10.
Depending on like the size of the production, like a lot of the equipment can be kind of dangerous. Like
Yes.
tractors, PTOs, and like
Yeah, so
Trailers.
equipment is one of them. What else?
It's lifting the split with the shovel, maybe.
Lifting
Yeah.
and maybe falling back
Yeah.
or hitting the head. What else?
Interesting.
Oh, overworking,
Oh, sorry,
like overworking.
overworking. So we're talking about brain injury right now, specifically in farming.
So you're saying, why is it dangerous?
Yeah. Why is it high risk? What is the correlation? So we said machines, falling, hitting your head.
Not
Stress?
very.
What?
a lot of stress.
No, livestock. Trying to milk a cow and the cow kicks back at you. Or a horse kicks back at you, or you fall off an animal, or you fall off the tractor. So there's a lot of things that I wasn't aware of that happen in farming. And the last census that the USDA did around disabilities in farming was a little bit older than 10 years old. So it was interesting to me, but I know that they're working on that. But really, really important to be mindful of your surroundings, right? Because we could get hurt anywhere. You could fall and get hurt. So it's really, really mindful and raising awareness that brain injury and trauma can happen to any of us at any time. Any other stories? Anybody else want to share their journey? Maybe one or two more. Come on, don't be shy.
I'll just share, maybe from a perspective on the other side, that I've had the privilege of hiring some disabled individuals on my farm, and that has been incredibly beneficial to my business in terms of how well they did the job, and that's been a positive story for people who want to try to do this kind of thing.
Thank you. Thank you. We're definitely going to add to that in a few minutes. Thank you for bringing that up, because it's stories like this that we need to hear more often, so that we create a more inclusive environment in agriculture and in farming, both for farm owners, landowners, and the workers, because people with disabilities can still work, can still function, but there are levels and there are different ways in which you could get to that space. Did you have your hand up?
Chat.
Can you read it for me, please?
It says, wondering if it's the pesticides that is a factor in farming injuries, also tractor and other accidents or machinery.
From Ellen.
Ellen, all of the above are yes, they all show up in research. Thank you for that. Anyone else would like to share?
So my journey is a very interesting one. My growing lifestyle right now is very personal. You know, I became vegan for my life, for my health, for my ancestors, really spiritually. you know, connecting back to my indigenous roots, I found out that I'm Black Native. And so it's been like calling me, you know, almost like, and I'm like, what? Like, I'm like, like, I don't want to really get my hands dirty type of person, like, you know, but it's been completely life-changing. Like this year I started, my partner and I started us on a CSA, you know, directly farm to table. So we've been having to cook more. I found out that I have food allergies. So I advocate for allergies as well, allergy awareness, which is a thing that most people don't talk about. And in Black and Brown communities, it's one of the high reasons of you know, death rates, because they don't take it serious enough. And so a lot of the way food is processed is killing us, especially in Black and Brown communities. And I've just witnessed a lot of death, you know, in my family circles, health ailments, you know, and I no longer wanted to be a part of that. So personally, I want to break the generational curse. But then as an advocate for Black and Brown people at large, you know, you can't talk about revolution without talking about environmental racism and living in, you know, Black and Brown communities by choice. You know, you have to be aware that we are dying in our environments, and you know, there's nothing there's usually no billboards about it, there's no public art around it, there's no information around how the city you live in, where you live in, is killing you. So along with doing the education, the work to make sure people of all ages are able to know their history, get good education, I have found that in these green spaces, you can create safe spaces in urban environments where we can grow our own food, heal ourselves. And so it's been a full kind of circle around to be hands-on, to be designing and advocating, and then learning how to farm and grow myself.
Thank you for sharing that. One of the reasons why I wanted to have as many people as you all would like share your own journeys is because there are bits and pieces that we all can take around the stories that we hear of success, of growth, of overcoming, to be able to apply that to ourselves or to our employees or to our volunteers and to our teams. Because we all heal in a different way, right? And we all experience life in a different way. And so when you think about how can accessible and inclusive farm work be used to heal and support us through trauma and aging, what are some things that come to mind outside of what we've already talked about? I really love the dialogue that we all have had. What are some things that come to mind? How can we create an accessible and inclusive space to continue to use it as a form of healing? Healing our mind, healing our soil, our souls, healing our spirit, healing our land. It's healing in a whole bunch of ways, not just one way. It's what everything that we touch, right? And the lives that we touch. Yes.
Grounding, if you know what that is. Walking barefoot in the grass. Like I was watching a video and I've done it, and it actually has helped. There's an Indian guru, and he said if you have allergies, dig a hole in the soil ankles deep and bury your feet. Just stay there for like 30-40 minutes and watch. And I did that in the summer, and I was just like, because like if I eat dairy, I just start being congested and all that. But I only do that, you know, when I'm feeling like bad, so my mood is all thrown off. It's actually pretty much helped. In fact, like when you do more holistic things, because like that's in my family to do holistic stuff, but I just didn't believe it as a kid. But when I started going through my path and my journey, you know, and went all into it.
Grounding is very healing. For those of you that have not tried it, I invite you to definitely try it. For some people, they have to start in small numbers, 5 minutes or 2 minutes, because you know, going from nothing to 45 minutes, your feet in the mud or in the ground, it's a lot. But a little bit at a time. There are practices that if you have a migraine and you have a headache or if you have sunburn, you take mud, and you make it, and then you apply it, and then hours later you feel better. Our indigenous ancestors use all kinds of healing methods using Mother Earth and plants and trees and bushes and all kinds of stuff. And so, and I want to believe that people back in the day lived a lot longer oftentimes than what they live today and had healthier lives. And so there's some things to learn from that. But there are 4 principles I want to sort of talk about that are beneficial, or maybe they're not principles, things that I have collected throughout the years, and it's also backed up by a lot of research. 4 things that happen when you practice that comes out of grounding, that comes out of putting your hands in the ground and farming and growing or producing. And that can be a small little pot that is 5 inches and you're just growing little lettuce. It doesn't matter what you grow, just watching the miracle of that growth and tending to it. So why is farming so helpful? There are 4 things that are discovered. One of the things is that farming helps individuals get connected. They get connected to themselves. They get connected to their souls. They get connected to their spirits. I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull up my notes here. I apologize because I lost my train of thought. And it allows for you to be in the present moment. So farming and being in nature and growing and healing, you have to be present because you're doing something. So you have to be there in the moment, whether you have a limitation or not. You have to be present if you want to do a good job and be successful. The second one is, which is my favorite one because I want to say the one that kept me alive, is having the responsibility to take care of something or someone or an animal. So I have chickens and I have dogs. And I had a whole bunch of baby trees, a whole bunch of whips that were dormant when I got them. I planted them, someone gave them to me as a donation. And when I knew that I had to get up every day so that I can tend to the chickens, that I can tend to the dogs, that I can tend to the trees and to the new plants, gave me life and gave me purpose. So the second one is being able to have responsibility towards others, whether it's the animals or plants or maybe other people that they're working with in teams, taking care of the trees, is being able to care for something that is alive, that if you don't care for it, that you'll die. The third one is having the autonomy to create a safe environment, because when you are working in nature and you're trying to heal, oftentimes you need to create that solitude, that space where you're just alone, where you have to separate yourself from everything around you. And when you separate yourself from everything around you and you're there listening to the birds, seeing the trees dance with the wind, maybe there's rain coming down and cleansing you. When you experience all of these things, sometimes that solitude helps you think about whatever it is that you need to think about, and allows you to feel your spirit and your soul and just be one within yourself. Because oftentimes we get busy and we just want to be doing because it's just how we don't think about our problems. We don't think about our issues. The more that we just do. But farming and growing and healing in nature sort of force you to be in solitude sometimes, so that you have no choice but to start thinking about those things and working them out, and hopefully they wash away and hopefully they dissolve. But there's work, self-work that you need to do. And the last one is, for many people who have indigenous roots, which I believe is everyone, personally, I believe that, is having that connection with your ancestors and nature. Thinking about what your grandparents did or your great-grandparents did and how things were before, and having that connection and being able to relive those wonderful memories that maybe you heard about or you research about. Having that connection with, for me, is my great-grandparents and my grandparents were all farmers. And so for me, when I'm in nature, I constantly think about all the things that they did, what they didn't do, and what did I miss, and how can I do that again? And when I had a bellyache, I remember my grandmother rubbing some leaf after she boiled it on my tummy and it went away. And what was that leaf? I want to find it now for my grandkids. And so it really connects you to your ancestry and in nature. It brings something up for you. What are some other things that being out in nature bring up for you as you heal? What are some thoughts? Anyone virtually?
I know what's up.
No,
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, she raised her hand first.
Go ahead. Who? Go ahead. Okay, I'm sorry.
Right?
Thank you. I think when I'm out in nature, looking at like the vastness of things or like the intricacy of just how things are made. Like I love science and I love knowing down to like what's going on with things. And so I think that I think that's beautiful. Like that. Like I have PTSD. And I think about like, yeah, like I have them, you know, because of learning and retaining information, recall. So it's like if I can find beauty in this, it's like, and I'm able to understand it, and it's like, yeah, I can find beauty in like what my kids as a world that I can still understand and see complex things and complex ideas and fascinating. Realizing, yeah, I'm complex too. And that's
Thank you for sharing. I think it's really important that we can reflect right on the life that we see and however it speaks to us. And oftentimes when we hire people with limitations, or we have people who are volunteers, sometimes we don't think about what's happening in their mind or what they're going through. We just give them a task and they do a great job. I mean, all my volunteers do an amazing job. But what I do with all my volunteers, all my staff, a takeaway is if you have people with limitations that work with you, if you haven't built a relationship with them, I always check in before they start the day. And I always check out with them at the end of the day. And I say, how are you doing today? You know, is there anything you want to talk about? And you don't have to be a therapist or a clinician or any of that to check in with somebody. And at the end of the day, you simply just say, I noticed that your eyes are teary today, or I noticed that you were in deep thought. I tend to leave my volunteers alone for a while intentionally, because a lot of my volunteers and the people that come to use this space to heal don't have green spaces. So I give them the task. If you get to it, great. And if you don't, that's fine. It's different than paid staff, obviously. But checking in is really, really important, because oftentimes things are going through them, and that employment or that opportunity is really helping to heal them. But oftentimes we don't hear those stories because we don't have the time or we don't know to ask. And so I encourage all of us to be mindful of that, because as they heal, we heal. Yes, thank you for that.
Yeah, for me, it would be being able to listen, look at the worms and the ants and the bees, and being able to communicate with people, like trade worms, you know, and just being able to have a voice and just connect with other people who trading and watching the bees how they work, watching the ants how they work, you know, and just watching them work, you know, that should inspire anyone, because there's a method, it's something that they do that'll outwork us all, you know, and make honey while doing it. Lifting what 100 or 1,000 pounds their weight, you know, it's just, yes, it's beautiful.
It is. There's so much life to capture and be able to see from things around us. And sometimes it could definitely melt away that stress or that anxiety or that depression or that dark space that we're in. It doesn't work for everybody. So I'm not going to stand here and say it works for everybody. You know, here's the recipe, because it does not work for everybody. Or if it does work, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. But it's important for us to recognize that that's just one more option that we have. Yes.
Ellen had a hand raised a while back, but I just wanted to
Okay,
wait
who
for
has?
everybody to speak.
Ellen? Ellen?
I want to say.
Yeah, I was just gonna say to add to this conversation, so many of us who deal with disability also deal with the dual challenge of not having financial backing for our lives. It's one of the number one reasons why people go into impoverishment or bank, whatever it is, it's often health related. And I think that as I hear all this wonderful workshop today, I just want to add that equation in again. Because in our country, more than many others, this is a reality. And, I'm not like this hardcore socialist, but I think the more we can dismantle this very unhealthy capitalism that goes along with our food system, with how we treat people who have gone through health challenges, I think, and the more we can kind of bypass it also and create new systems that, I refer to things like permaculture, or traditional indigenous ways of, providing for community. I think that part of all of this accessibility is really important to me personally.
I agree. Thank you. And that's a great segue to our next piece, which these are some of the things that combat some of the slide that we had before that talked about barriers, and we had money and land access, health insurance. Remember that slide? So these are some of the things, and these are all free. Anybody can do these things for the most part, either because they're free services or there's funding opportunities to help people with these type of stuff. And so being part of having an agricultural space that is inclusive of disabilities is being mindful of the aging community. Again, not every person that is older has a disability. It could be that with age they have arthritis. It could be that they have another health condition that is not considered a disability. And so as part of someone coming into a farm, being mindful that, maybe asking, do you need help walking down? Do you need to sit for a little while? If you have someone who is working who's older, do you need to stand against something? Do you need a longer break? Is the sun bothering you? Can we get you a hat? Do you need more water? Do you need more bathroom breaks? Okay, these are all things that are part of being accessible and inclusive. But it may be something that we've never even thought about, but it's just having that conversation and speaking to say, okay, what do you need? Something that Mark talked a little bit about in his own experience, sort of the risk of communities, and a few others touched upon it too. Healing spaces and growing spaces and green spaces are a great opportunity to bring at-risk individuals to those spaces. There's many community gardens, there's many programs that are free that would allow you to come in and provide the service while providing healing opportunities for individuals, but also teaching new workforce skills and new abilities, and teaching individuals how to have a voice for themselves. Because a lot of people that have a limitation or a new disability are shy about speaking about it, or timid or embarrassed. I was very embarrassed. It took me a whole year and a half to tell anybody that I had a disability. And I still struggle with it, because the reality is that there's some parts of what happened to me that I can never get back. And it's still hard, but the reality is you have to learn to give that language. And so talking to at-risk communities and finding out what is their limitation and how do we help? Is it funding? Is it money, like Ellen said? Is it finding the right foods, because they may be vegan or they may be lactose intolerant? All of that requires money. And sometimes eating healthier food is more expensive than eating junk food. And so it's, how do we start? Maybe we start by teaching folks how to grow their own food in a small space. If they have that space, or finding a space where that can happen. Part of having an inclusive space is talking about suicide prevention openly, without it being a stigma, without it being something that is seen as negative. In a lot of communities, in a lot of cultures, talking about suicide or seeing a therapist or a psychologist is no, you're crazy if you go visit one of those. What is wrong with you? You're shaming the family. And so being able to have an inclusive space that, you know, when you're talking about how you're talking about feelings and emotions is hard. But sometimes within those conversations, you can save someone's life because you may be able to see or pick up a red flag. And you may be able to say, hey, let's talk. And if you don't know, I want to give this resource out. I always like to give it out. There, if you Google suicide hotline, there's a 24/7 number that has multiple languages and is open all the time. So if you ever or anyone in your groups, on your teams, in your farms are feeling sad, depressed, anxious, or you yourself feel like something's off with your staff, call the number. And they will give you advice so that you know how to work with that person. And if you're the person going through it, they will help you. Okay. Some other inclusive practices are programming accommodations. So what does that mean? I go to the FSA office, the Farm Service Agency office, and I'm going to apply for a farm number for my farm. The lady says to me, after I told her I have a disability in my vision, and she said, I'm going to send you the paperwork on the computer. You have a week to complete it and send it back to me. 14 links, 10 documents later, I didn't even get through half of the paragraphs. I called her back and I said, is there anyone in your organization that can provide an accommodation? Maybe help me fill these out. Oh, no, we don't do that. You got to go on the computer. It's all self-explanatory. Well, I can't go through all the links that led to the links that led to the other link to the other link. So I asked them to send it to me in snail mail. They sent it to me in snail mail. When I got it on snail mail, the print was about 5-point font. Okay, it's not helping me. So I went above that person and above that person, above that person, not to complain because I don't want to be negative, but to educate. And I said, is there any way that we could take the stuff at this office and we could make it as an option for larger print? So now I go work with my local communities, and now we have things in larger print for those people that need it. Because I could make larger print in the computer, but if I have a screen sensitivity and light sensitivity, I can't use the computer, right? But people don't know what they don't know, so we have to help them. The other option that I provided, again, these are program accommodations. Can you come to the office, Yvette, and we'll do it with you? Another option. So if you have an employee, if you are applying for a loan, if you are seeking a service, always remember that there are accommodations to the programs that are already in place, but we have to be able to change our narrative and be able to openly say, I need A, B, and C, and be crystal clear. It doesn't mean we're always going to get it, but we could definitely try, because people can't read our minds and people don't know what we need unless we say what we need. So for me, it's important to educate at both ends, me and them. And so program accommodations are oftentimes very simple and cost effective, and many times it's something that people can do to help one another right there and then. I'm looking at the time. Oh my Lord, time went flying. Supportive referral services. So for your teams, for yourself, there's always Easter Seals, Goodwill. They have a lot of programming for people with disabilities, people with limitations and special needs. And I'm going to get on the next slide with some others. Tap into them. Access should be for all abilities. If I can hear, if I can see, or if I'm limited in hearing and seeing, light sensation, it could be perfume sensitivity, it could be a food allergy, it could be that my knees hurt, it could be so many things. You know, I'm going to give you an example of access. Someone asked me a little while ago, what was I doing after this session? And I said, well, I can't walk to the other place because of my knee and my fatigue. So I started here, I didn't even go get a tag, and I'm going to be here because for me, I have to park there and I can't walk that far. And somebody from the NOFA team was very kind and they said to me, we're going to get you a ride if we want you to come. They don't have to do that, but that's part of being accessible. That's part of them hearing me and seeing me. And so it's really, really important. Part of me, I wasn't going to be here today had it not been for a gentleman named David that organized all this. For the last 3 weeks, he's been working with me offline, off hours, trying to help me create my narrative to be here today, helping me create things and giving me things audibly because I couldn't do it in the computer. And so that's somebody that hears you and sees you. And it's really, really important. We all can do that. It doesn't cost us anything. Assistive technologies. These are for people that work in farms, in environments that have usually bigger equipment that may not be able to get in the front seat of a tractor or a truck, and they sell lifts that bring you from the floor on the lift to the trucks and to the combines and to all that. We're talking big commercial, usually big farms. There are services that are inclusive for that. Next slide, please, where we talk about funding and resources. If you want
Can
to
I jump in? Oh,
Jocelyn?
sorry. Yeah, I just want to jump in with two things. Quick comment, which is that language also compounds all of these things. If somebody's not a first language English speaker, that could be a whole nother workshop. And I also just want to jump in and say we have about 5 minutes left till 12:30. We can go a little after if needed, but just wanted to do a quick time check. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. Language is really, really important, whether it's spoken language or sign language, okay? Here are some resources that have been extremely helpful for me and for individuals that I work with that I want to share with you. They're not all about funding, and these are a group of organizations that I put together that are open to people with limitations and disabilities and have programming and oftentimes funding to help new beginner farmers, veteran farmers, female farmers, have a program for women, and they also have a program for people with disabilities, okay? So I'm gonna go try to do, well, I don't have time. So if you Google any of these, you can take a screenshot, okay? And you go on their websites and you look at all their programming and you dig between link and link and link, there are opportunities. Agribility has a lot of programs specifically for farmers across the nation, okay? That it also provides, they don't pay for stuff, but they point you to the right funding if you need certain things or if your staff needs certain things. I already talked about Easter Seals and the other ones are funding sources. Next slide. If you all want to learn more, and that's the last, that's the, okay. If you all want to learn more and want to get involved, we have a full day conference about this with Agribility is going to be in the house. Farm Credit East is going to be in the house to talk about their Farm Credit East is one of the programs. It's also a financial organization. They offer an EAP type of program for their farmers. So when they go help their farmers, if you're a client of them and they see that you're struggling mentally with health, with family, with things, they pay for your services to go seek coaching. And so for those of you that didn't know, it's a great service and they're going to be at the conference. And so there'll be all kinds of great information if you want to learn how to advocate for yourself and for others. That's my contact information. Next slide. And at this time, I just want to take any questions. Justin said we could go a couple minutes over if I heard correctly. Any questions that you may have? I know that the last was fast. Any questions?
Can you guys just go back to the last slide so we can copy down the info?
Yes,
Thank you.
for people who are copying down the info, are there any questions? I know some of you have finished. If there are no questions, can we go around and everyone who's comfortable say one word? If they found this information to be helpful today and maybe one takeaway as a result of today's session? I'll start here.
Well, let me think, I need to think for a moment.
Okay.
It's a good question.
Okay, no problem. I'm gonna go this way.
Very appreciative that you do this work and let's see if my guys want to go to the office.
Oh, I forgot to say, very good part. Any farmer or community supporter that goes to the conference gets a stipend to come to the conference to cover for their travel expenses.
I work on mindfulness, really, I think that I kind of took from this, like knowing, being aware of people's circumstances and what they're doing, and yeah, we're not talking for the day farming, what, you know, aware of the healing people are going through while
Thank you.
inspired, formal, hospitable, caring, loving, hands-on, and doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Access. is One word that comes to mind for being there.
I'm thinking about connection and relationship building.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Sorry about that. I apologize. Advocacy, okay, I'm gonna go, where do you want me to go? No, you go ahead.
Respect.
Respect, okay. See you in deep thought. You want to elaborate?
Well, just respect in the other, respect in what people do, respect in what people can offer.
Yeah, I like, okay, thank you, thank you.
I don't really have time to do it, but I'm thinking a lot about working on a farm that is very fast paced and how to accommodate everyone's needs when people like learn differently, remember things differently. But it often feels like we're moving too fast to be able to take those things into account. So then the people who don't necessarily have the same type of recall or memory or tasks or instructions kind of end up getting left behind and stuck on simpler tasks because they just need a different type of teaching. So I'm really interested in how to make space for that.
The
even-
check-in that I talked about is really important. That's a tool that we use because in our farm, and we have a lot of different healing by growing farm ambassadors in different states, but that check-in is really important before going in or after. But without that check-in, we will never know what the needs of the folks that are working with us or for us need, that you have to make intentional time for that. And we could definitely go offline and talk more, but that's the first thing that comes to mind because I wasn't doing that and I was observing and I said, no, work needs to be done. But for me, the relationships are more important and their safety and their healing than the work that needs to be done. So it's keeping that in mind, but we could definitely talk more offline. You're
I
welcome.
think healing and growth come to mind a lot. Like also farming for a lot of people is like a way they connect back to their culture, like back to like their family, or like a lot of farmers I've interacted with, like they've farmed for a long time, like back to their own country. And so like getting to do that here, just like it opens up their mind and like it makes them so happy. So seeing that and like hearing what you talked about really reminded me of that.
Thank you, thank you. Mark, and then we're gonna go to our virtual room.
You spoke. And I would say that because you get to hear everything from everyone else's perspective. And I get to hear their stories and stuff. So I get to apply that to my life now.
You know, I always say it's our perspective virtually in here, and you see the empty chairs and the missing perspective. So there's always opportunities to get more perspective. It's not about one person or two or three. It's about all of us. It's a collective. Jocelyn, please.
Yeah, I think Ellen wanted to jump in here.
Well, I'll
Ellen, did
wait,
you want to say anything?
I'll wait for you, Jocelyn. You wanted to say something or any of the other folks on the line I've spoken on.
No, I'm just holding space for others. Go ahead.
So the word for me would be affirming.
Mm.
And I'm also going to request that I hope that the conference, which sounds wonderful in Connecticut, is online as well. Some of us have really challenged immune systems, so we're not able to be in spaces with others. And I think that's important. I'd love that message to get out to everyone that some of us just can't be in the room at this time.
We are working towards that, Ellen. So definitely stay in touch and
Great.
thank you.
This has been wonderful. I mean, for those of us who really deal with disability, it's really so affirming.
Thank you. Jocelyn, any last words from you before I close?
Not too much here. I just want to thank you. I've learned a lot. It's been great to hear what the audience has shared as well. And I also just want to point out, I did put some links and notes in the chat for our bulk order, our online auction, and our session evaluation, but those are also available outside the door. If it's hard for you to access that virtually, you can, there's a QR code on the way out the door. You can check those out on your way out. Thanks so much.
Well, I just want to say it was an honor and a pleasure to share with you all and to hear all of your stories. And I pray and I hope that your journeys continue to flourish and that you continue to be light to others. And when you see someone that is in the dark space or ourselves are in dark spaces, just remember of that seed that we often plant, right where it goes, but the beauty that comes out of it in the life. And with that, thank you so much. It was an honor and a pleasure to be here, and I hope to stay connected.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.